The alarm didn't sound like a standard evacuation signal. It sounded like something dying. Carla Henning had her entire right arm buried in a feeding bucket when the shrieking started, half nutrient paste, half whatever passed for protein supplement on this side of the outer fringe. She froze, elbow deep in synthetic slurry, and looked up at the ceiling panels as they started strobing red. "That's new," she muttered. The Vryn enclosure exploded into chaos. 6 full-grown apex predators, each the size of a small shuttle, fur like brushed steel, teeth like combat knives, threw themselves against the reinforced barriers. The impact rattled her teeth. One of them reared up on hind legs and screamed, a sound that made her hindbrain scream right back. Okay, everyone stay calm." No one was calm. Kelnith, her supervisor, a spindle-limbed bureaucrat with 4 arms and the personality of a tax auditor, stood frozen in the center of the observation deck. His eye stalks were retracting and extending in rapid, panicked pulses. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out at first. Then the walls caught fire. Not metaphorically. Literally. The left wall panel peeled open like burnt skin. An orange flame poured through the gap. Section 4. Subsection 9. Paragraph 12. Kelnith stammered, his voice climbing 3 octaves. "In the event of facility-wide compromise, all personnel must evacuate to designated zones and await. Kel, shut up and move." Carla grabbed his upper left arm and yanked. He stumbled after her, still reciting protocol like a prayer. The other staff were already scrambling toward the exits, insectoid archivists clicking in high-pitched distress, crystalline administrators refracting light in panicked rainbows as they fled. The Vryn were still throwing themselves against the barriers, and then Carla's brain caught up to what her gut already knew. The cubs. Kelnith blinked all 6 eyes at her. "What?" "The nursery wing. The cubs are still in the nursery wing." His face did something complicated. His mandibles clicked shut. "The nursery wing is in Sector 6. Sector 6 is..." He trailed off, looking at the smoke now billowing through the observation deck. "Burning," Carla finished. "Yeah, I noticed." She turned and ran. Behind her, Kelnith made a sound like a stepped-on whistle. "Henning, stop. You cannot, protocol forbids." She didn't stop. The corridor to Sector 6 was a nightmare. Emergency lights flickered. The walls were hot to the touch. Somewhere overhead, something groaned like the whole structure was trying to decide whether to collapse now or in 5 minutes. And that's when the sprinkler system kicked in. Carla looked up just in time to see the nozzles engage, spraying a fine mist across the burning corridor. The fire got worse. Not water. Definitely not water. "Oh. You have got to be kidding me." The mist hit the flames and they surged, crawling up the walls like living things. The heat doubled. Tripled. She threw an arm over her face and kept running. Behind her, she heard Kelnith's voice, distant and crackling through the chaos. "Henning! Henning! Return immediately. The juveniles are classified as non-sentient assets. Guild Regulation 446 clearly states." She reached the nursery wing entrance. Kelnith was suddenly there, all 4 arms spread wide, blocking the door. "You cannot enter," he said, his voice shaking but firm. "Acceptable loss parameters have been exceeded. We must prioritize sentient life." Carla stared at him. Smoke curled between them. Somewhere behind the sealed door, she heard a sound, high-pitched, desperate, scared. "Cool story," she said. Then she kicked the emergency release. The door shrieked open. A wall of heat slammed into her face. Kelnith made a garbled sound of protest, but she was already through, her lab coat flapping, her glorified gardening gloves, the only thing between her and third-degree burns. The other staff stood frozen. In the corridor behind her, a gallery of horrified alien faces watching as she disappeared into the smoke. Inside, the air was acid. Her eyes watered immediately. She pulled her collar up over her mouth and nose, squinting through the haze. The nursery was worse than she'd imagined. Cribs overturned, walls blackened and sagging. The heat was so intense she could feel her skin tightening. And in the center of it all, 6 shapes. 6 Vrin cubs, each the size of a Great Dane, lean and liquid-muscled, their fur streaked with ash. And they were circling her. Their eyes were pure black. No recognition. No memory of the human who'd bottle-fed them last week, who'd cleaned their enclosures, who'd sung stupid songs while checking their teeth. Just instinct. Just hunger. Carla's pulse hammered in her throat. Every nerve in her body screamed run. She didn't run. She dropped to her knees, made herself small, and started humming. It was a lullaby. The one she used to sing to her niece back on Earth, back before she'd taken a contract 3-star systems away to work with things that could bite her in half. The tune was soft, ridiculous, even. Completely out of place in a burning building surrounded by predators. The cubs paused, their ears swiveled forward. One of them, smaller than the others, with a notched ear from a scuffle 2 weeks ago, took a step closer. Carla kept humming, kept her hands low, palms open. The cub sniffed the air, tilted its head. Another step. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The cub's nose brushed her outstretched hand, and then the ceiling gave out. The world came down in chunks. Carla threw herself over the cub with the notched ear, felt the impact of debris hammering her back. Heat, dust, the shriek of metal tearing. She couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Just held on while the building tried to kill them both. When the noise stopped, she was still alive. That was a surprise. She pushed herself up, coughing, and realized the cubs were swarming her. Not attacking, clinging. Desperate. Their claws dug into her lab coat, her shoulders. One of them had its teeth locked around her boot, like she was a life raft in a burning sea. "Okay," she rasped. "Okay. We're going. We're going right now." She scooped 2 of them under her arms. They were heavier than they looked. All muscle and panic, and the others latched on wherever they could find purchase. One climbed onto her back. Another wrapped around her shoulders like the world's most dangerous scarf. The 6th cub, the runt, pressed against her chest. She staggered toward where the door used to be. The corridor was an inferno now. Flames licked the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The air shimmered with heat. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. Carla stumbled forward anyway. 1 foot. Then another. The cubs were whimpering, high-pitched and terrified. And she was laughing, actually laughing, because if she didn't laugh, she'd scream, and screaming wouldn't help anyone. "Almost there," she told them, her voice cracked and raw. "Almost there. Almost." She crashed through the exit door and into open air. The staff had formed a wide semicircle in the courtyard, holding fire suppressors but not using them, frozen in place like they'd stumbled into a nightmare and couldn't wake up. Carla stood there, swaying. Her hair was singed to ragged edges. Blood ran down her arms, where claws had dug in. Her lab coat was more holes than fabric. The cubs were still clinging to her, a writhing mass of ash-streaked fur and terrified whimpers. She grinned at the crowd. "Anyone got a first aid kit?" Nobody moved. Kelnith's mouth was hanging open so far his mandibles were scraping the ground. All 4 of his hands were trembling. "You..." He started. Stopped. Tried again. "You cannot, that is not..." Yeah, I know. Violated about 80 protocols. We'll do the paperwork later." She took a step forward. The staff took a step back. Carla was about to say something sarcastic, when she heard it. A sound that made every living thing in the courtyard go still. A roar. Deep. Primal. The kind of sound that evolution had specifically designed to make prey animals evacuate their bowels and run. The perimeter fence exploded inward. 6 shapes came through the gap, moving like liquid violence, their muscles coiling and releasing with perfect, terrible efficiency. The adult Vrin had arrived. They were massive. Easily twice the size of the cubs. Their fur battle-scarred and streaked with old wounds. Fangs like daggers. Eyes like black holes. And they were focused on Carla. "Oh," she said quietly. "Oh, that's bad." The staff scattered. The insectoid archivists shrieked and fled for the secondary building. The crystalline administrators shattered into 1,000 refracted pieces of panic and vanished. Kelnith stumbled backward, all four arms flailing, his eye stalks retracting so hard they nearly disappeared into his skull. Only Carla remained. She stood perfectly still, cubs whimpering in her arms, and watched the pack approach. Every xenobiology text she'd ever read said the same thing. Vrin pack behavior is absolute. Any threat to the young results in immediate, lethal response. No hesitation, no mercy. She was holding their young. She was covered in their blood. She was dead. The pack alpha moved forward, low to the ground, a growl vibrating through the air like distant thunder. Its lips peeled back, showing teeth that could punch through starship hull plating. Carla met its eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I was trying to help." The alpha stopped 3 meters away. Sniffed. Its nostrils flared. Its head tilted, just slightly, in an eerily familiar gesture. Then it lowered its head to the ground. All the way down. A submission posture. The entire pack followed. 6 apex predators, each capable of tearing apart a combat mech, prostrating themselves before a human in a burned lab coat. The courtyard went silent. Carla stared. From somewhere, behind her, Kelnith's voice emerged as a broken whisper. "Impossible." The cubs in Carla's arms started wriggling, their whimpers turning to excited yips. She knelt slowly, carefully, and set them down on the scorched ground. They tumbled over each other in their haste, scrambling toward the adults with the clumsy desperation of children reuniting with parents. The pack surrounded them immediately, sniffing, nuzzling, checking for injuries with the kind of focused intensity that transcended species. And then, they surrounded Carla. Not threatening, protecting. The alpha pressed against her left side, solid as a bulkhead. Another adult flanked her right. The others formed a living barrier, facing outward, watching the scattered staff with eyes that promised swift violence to anyone who moved wrong. Carla stood in the center of it all, barely breathing. Kelnith had finally found his voice. That is, they do not Vrin pack. Behavior does not include submission displays to other species. It is not documented. It is not possible. They are apex predators. They acknowledge no authority beyond the alpha. This is... Maybe they just like me, Carla said. Her voice sounded strange in the sudden quiet. Calm. Almost casual. A junior researcher, nervous, chitinous, with 6 trembling legs, crept forward from where it had been hiding behind a supply crate. "How did you know?" it asked, its translator crackling. "How did you know they would not attack?" Carla looked down at the alpha, still pressed against her side, its breathing steady and deep. She grinned. "I didn't." The words hung in the air for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the sound of atmospheric engines cut through the silence. Everyone looked up. 3 gunships descended from the sky, sleek and black, their weapons systems already primed and glowing. Galactic Command had arrived. And they were not here to talk. The gunships landed in perfect formation, their engines kicking up ash and debris. Ramps dropped with hydraulic precision. 30 armored figures emerged, moving in synchronized patterns that screamed military training. Galactic Animal Control. They wore black tactical gear that looked designed for war, not wildlife management. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city block. Their helmets were featureless, reflective, designed to be intimidating. It was working. The lead enforcer stepped forward, and Carla knew immediately this was going to be a problem. Tulvaj was tall, almost 3 meters, with chitin plating that gleamed like polished obsidian. 4 arms, each ending in manipulators that could probably crush durasteel. Cold, reptilian eyes that tracked movement with predatory focus. And a clipboard. Somehow, the clipboard was the scariest part. Attention. Tulvaj's voice boomed across the courtyard, amplified and emotionless. This facility is now under Galactic Animal Control jurisdiction. All personnel will evacuate immediately. The Class 9 organisms will be sedated and relocated per standard protocol. Carla didn't move. The Vrin pack tensed, their hackles rising like a wave. Tulvaj's eyes fixed on her. "You, human. Step away from the predators." "No." The word hung in the air. Tulvaj tilted his head. "Treaty 82. Section 14. Subsection 9. Unauthorized physical contact with Class 9 predators constitutes a felony offense. Penalty is immediate detention and species-wide sanctions. Cool, Carla said. You got a permit for those tranq rifles? This is not a negotiation. Funny, because you're still talking. The enforcers fanned out, weapons raised. Carla could see the tranquilizer rounds loaded in the chambers, enough sedative to drop a Vrin in seconds. Probably enough to stop its heart if the dose was wrong. The pack saw them too. The growling started low, a rumble that Carla felt in her bones. The alpha stepped forward, positioning itself directly between the enforcers and the cubs. Tulvaj raised his rifle. Carla crossed her arms. You shoot, she said quietly. They charge. You charge. I don't stop them. Tulvaj's finger was already on the trigger. Time slowed. Carla could see the calculation happening behind those cold eyes. The math of it. 30 armed enforcers versus 6 apex predators and 1 unarmed human. On paper, it wasn't even close. But Tulvaj had seen the footage. He'd watched these same predators tear through reinforced barriers like tissue paper. He'd read the casualty reports from other containment breaches. And he was looking at Carla burned, bleeding, covered in soot and claw marks standing perfectly calm in the center of a Vrin pack. You're obstructing official business, Tulvaj said. I'm saving your life. These organisms are dangerous. So am I. It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact. The standoff stretched. Then Carla spoke again, her voice carrying across the courtyard. Emergency Compassion Doctrine, Subsection 3. In cases where immediate action is required to prevent loss of juvenile life, personnel are authorized to engage in physical contact with restricted species. The cubs imprinted on me during rescue operations. That's a legal gray area, and you know it. Tulvaj's mandibles clicked. That provision requires supervisor approval. Supervisor was reciting evacuation protocols while the building burned. I made an executive decision. That is not. He's right. Kelneith's voice cracked across the courtyard. Everyone turned. Kelneith stood there, all 4 arms clutching data pads, his eye stalks fully extended despite the obvious terror radiating from every inch of his body. Emergency Compassion Doctrine does apply, he said, his voice shaking but steady. I witnessed the fire. I witnessed the structural collapse. I witnessed xenobiologist Henning risk her life to save the juveniles when all other options had been exhausted. He held up a datapad with trembling hands. I am filing official documentation. Retroactive approval. The contact was necessary. It was legal. Carla stared at him. Kelneith wouldn't meet her eyes, but he didn't lower the datapad. Tulvaj was silent for a long moment. Then the pack alpha moved. It didn't charge, didn't attack. Just walked forward, slowly, deliberately, until it stood beside Carla. Shoulder to shoulder. Its eyes never left Tulvaj. The message was clear. You go through us. Tulvaj lowered the rifle. 1 inch. This matter will be reviewed, he said. Command will want a full report. Carla smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Smart choice. The enforcers held position for another 30 seconds. Then Tulvaj gestured, and they withdrew to their gunships. The engines roared to life. Within minutes, they were gone. Carla let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That, Kelneith said weakly, was the most terrifying experience of my life. Thanks for the backup. I may be investigated for this. You will be investigated for this. I know. He paused. It was still the right thing to do. Carla looked at him, really looked, and saw something new in those eye stalks. A spine. Yeah, she said. It was. But command doesn't forget. And they don't forgive. The footage went viral in less than 3 hours. Someone Carla suspected one of the insectoid archivists had uploaded the security recordings to the Galactic Net. Every angle. Every moment. Carla walking through fire. Carla kneeling among the cubs. Carla emerging from the inferno like something out of a myth, covered in ash and predators, the Vrin pack bowing. The standoff with Tulvaj. It was everywhere. Back on Earth, The humans were losing their minds. Vid channels played it on loop. Social feeds exploded with commentary. Someone made a remix with dramatic music. Someone else turned it into a meme. Meanwhile, on Karen's first day, she was a hero. To the rest of the galaxy, she was a disaster waiting to happen. The Galactic Conservation Union issued a statement calling her actions reckless and dangerous, demonstrating a fundamental disregard for established safety protocols. The Interspecies Wildlife Federation demanded humans be barred from working with Class 9 organisms. The Collective for Sentient Rights accused her of exploiting non-sentient beings for personal glory. Carla watched the feeds from her tiny quarters. A cold pack pressed against her shoulder where a cub had dug in particularly deep. Personal glory, she muttered. Right, because third-degree burns are so glamorous. Kelnith appeared in her doorway looking haggard. You should see this, he said. He handed her a datapad. Official seal of the Vryn Homeworld Council. Carla read it twice. They're granting me what now? Honorary pack status, Kelnith said. You're the first non-Vryn in recorded history. Apparently, the pack's behavior has been transmitted back to their homeworld. The elders are calling it a sign. A sign of what? They did not specify. Carla scrolled through the rest of the messages. 14 star systems had issued travel bans. She was officially prohibited from entering their space. 8 others had sent invitations, universities, research facilities, conservation groups. The humans wanted her for speaking tours. The aliens wanted her investigated. Kelnith was being reviewed for negligence. And her contract was under administrative evaluation, which was bureaucrat speak for, we're deciding whether to fire you or promote you. This is a mess, she said. Yes, I'm going to have to testify, aren't I? Almost certainly. Great. Carla tossed the datapad onto her bunk. Any other good news? Kelnith hesitated. There is one more thing. What? The Vryn. They have not returned to their enclosure. Carla sat up. What do you mean they haven't returned? I mean they are currently stationed outside your quarters. All 6 adults. They have been there for 4 hours. She stared at him. Then she got up and walked to the door. Kelnith was right. The pack was there, arranged in a loose semicircle around her building. The cubs were curled up in the center, sleeping. The adults were awake, watching, their eyes tracking every movement in the compound. One of the junior researchers, the nervous, 6-legged one, crept past at a distance, carrying supply crates. The pack watched him until he disappeared. They're guarding me, Carla said slowly. Yes. They've imprinted on me. It appears so. Can we unimprint them? Kelnith's eye stalks drooped. I have no idea. This has never happened before. Carla looked down at the alpha, who was staring back at her with those bottomless black eyes. So what do we do? Kelnith sighed. I suspect we are about to find out. The Vryn started following her everywhere, and the galaxy was watching. 3 weeks later, Carla was trying very hard to pretend everything was normal. It wasn't working. She stood in the supply shed, cataloging nutrient supplements, while outside the sanctuary, a Vryn pack maintained a perimeter that would make a military cordon jealous. They'd taken up residence on day 2. They hadn't left. The adults rotated watch positions with tactical precision. The cubs played in the shade of her shuttle, tumbling over each other in mock battles. Every delivery drone that approached got a warning growl that sent it skittering back to minimum safe distance. The galactic media was having a collective meltdown. Journalists camped at the facility gates. Vid crews fought for position. Every day brought new headlines. Humans still alive, despite proximity to Deathworld predators. Vryn pack refuses relocation, experts baffled. Is this the beginning of human-predator symbiosis? That last one had come from an Earth news outlet. Carla had laughed so hard she'd spilled her drink. Kelnith appeared in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. He probably hadn't. Henning, he said carefully. May I ask you something? Sure. Can you send them away? Carla looked up from her datapad. Outside, the alpha was sprawled in a patch of sunlight, one eye open and tracking movement. 180 kilos of apex predator, napping like an oversized dog. Does it look like they take orders from me? I thought perhaps. Kel, I don't control them. I don't command them. They're here because they want to be here. But the regulations didn't account for this. Carla gestured at the window. Nobody did. Kelnith's eye stalks drooped. Command is requesting daily updates. The media is relentless. The guild wants to know when we can resume normal operations. We are resuming normal operations. I'm literally cataloging supplies right now. With a Class 9 Predator pack maintaining a defensive perimeter around your workspace. Potato? Potato. That expression does not work in text-based communication. Carla grinned. Then she noticed what the Alpha was doing. It had dragged something to the door of her quarters. Something large. Something dead. Oh no, she said. What? They brought me another kill. Kelnith's face did something complicated. That is the fourth one this week. I know. What are you doing with them? Redirecting them to the carnivore feeding program. We can't let them go to waste. This is unprecedented. Yeah, well, get used to it. Outside, a delivery drone attempted to approach. The pack's youngest adult, a female with a scar across her muzzle, rose smoothly and growled. The drone retreated. They're protecting you, Kelnith said quietly. I noticed. Why? Carla looked at him. I don't know, but they're not hurting anyone. They're not causing problems. And honestly, I feel safer than I have in years. The galaxy is watching, Kelnith said. And they are learning something new about humans. What's that? That you are either the bravest species in known space or the most insane. Carla thought about it. Why not? Both? The xenopsychologist arrived on a Thursday. Her name was Vethri, and she moved like liquid mercury, graceful, unsettling, with too many joints in all the wrong places. Her species didn't have a pronounceable name in Galactic Common, so everyone just called them Silvers. She set up in Kelnith's office, surrounded by scanning equipment and analysis tools, and summoned Carla for an interview. Please. Sit, Vethri said, her voice like wind chimes. Carla. Saturday. Outside the window. The pack watched. I am here to understand, Vethri began. The nature of your bond with the Vryn. Okay. Specifically, I need to understand how you knew. Knew what? How to behave in the nursery. How you knew to kneel, to make yourself small, to vocalize in a non-threatening manner. Vethri's eyes, 6 of them focused with unnerving intensity. How did you know they would not attack? Carla shrugged. I didn't. That is not an answer. Sure it is. I didn't know. I guessed. Vethri's fingers twitched. Based on what data? No data. Just instinct, I guess. Humans do not possess pheromone sensitivity. You have no telepathic resonance. Your species lacks the biological framework for interspecies empathic bonding. Vethri leaned forward. Yet you read a Deathworld predator's behavioral cues in a life-threatening situation with perfect accuracy. Explain. Carla thought about it. We're just good at reading the room, she said finally. Vethri stared at her. That is not scientifically viable. And yet here we are. There must be a mechanism. A neurological pathway. A sensory input we have not identified. Maybe we're just good at pattern recognition. All species have pattern recognition. Yeah. But humans. Carla trailed off, trying to find the words. We're persistence hunters, right? Back on Earth, before civilization, we'd chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We'd track animals for days. We'd read footprints, broken branches, disturbed grass. We got really good at noticing tiny details and making intuitive leaps. That does not explain. And we're social predators. We evolved reading each other's body language, micro-expressions, tone of voice. We had to know when someone was lying, or scared, or about to attack. We're wired to notice those things. Carla gestured out the window. The cubs were terrified. Their ears were back, their tails were low. They were circling but not committing. That's not hunting behavior. That's fear behavior. Vethri was silent for a long moment. So you applied social predator instincts to an entirely different species. I guess. That should not have worked. But it did. Vethri made a notation on her datapad. Carla couldn't read the script, but she caught a glimpse of the translation overlay. Humans possess an intuitive danger response system that borders on precognitive. Recommend further study. Also recommend never cornering one. Is that really what you're writing? Carla asked. Vethri's eyes didn't move from the screen. Yes. You think we're dangerous. I think you are unpredictable. And in a galaxy built on predictable behavior patterns, that is the most dangerous thing of all. Outside, the Alpha raised its head and looked directly at the window. Vethri flinched. One more question, she said, her voice carefully controlled. How do you know they will continue to protect you? I don't. That does not concern you? Carla smiled. Not really. Why not? Because if they wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. Vethri made another note. Then she closed her datapad and stood. Thank you for your time, xenobiologist Henning. I have all the information I need. That's it? Yes. Vethri paused at the door. One last observation. What's that? The galaxy has spent 10,000 years studying Deathworld predators. We have protocols, methodologies, entire scientific disciplines dedicated to understanding them. She looked back at Carla. You ignored all of it and walked into fire. That should have killed you. But it didn't. No, Vethri said quietly. It didn't. And that, xenobiologist Henning, is what terrifies me most. She left. Carla sat alone in the office, watching the pack through the window. But one question remained unanswered. And it would change everything. 4 months later, Carla stood in a conference room that was too bright, too sterile, and too full of people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The offer had come 2 weeks ago. First human liaison to Deathworld species conservation. It was a made-up position. Everyone knew it. They'd created the role specifically because they didn't know what else to do with her. And because saying no to Carla Henning with a Vrin pack at her back seemed like a bad idea. She'd accepted on one condition. The Vrin came with her. Galactic Command had agreed so fast it was almost funny. Now she stood at a podium. Cameras everywhere. Journalists from 60 systems jammed into the press gallery. The Alpha lay beside her chair. The cubs were in a secure area nearby. The other adults maintained position outside the building. Nobody had tried to stop them. An alien journalist, crystalline, refracting light in nervous patterns, raised a manipulator. Xenobiologist Henning, they said. How does it feel to be the only being in galactic history to earn the loyalty of a Vrin pack? Carla looked down at the Alpha. It looked back. Those bottomless black eyes holding something that might have been trust, or might have been instinct, or might have been something the galaxy didn't have a word for yet. She smiled. I just did what anyone would do. The room went silent. Because everyone in that room, every diplomat, every scientist, every bureaucrat who'd spent their career studying Deathworld predators knew the truth. No one else would have done it. No one else would have walked into that fire. No one else would have knelt before terrified predators and hummed a lullaby. No one else would have stood between 30 armed enforcers and a pack of apex predators and refused to move. Only a human. In the back row, an elder diplomat, a Kuresh, ancient and scarred from a dozen diplomatic wars, leaned toward their aide. The aide was young, nervous, taking frantic notes. The diplomat watched Carla for a long moment. Then they whispered, quiet enough that only the aide could hear. We should never have let humans into the wild. The aide's stylus froze. Sir? The diplomat didn't look away from Carla, who was now fielding questions with the casual confidence of someone who'd walked through fire and come out laughing. They don't think like us, the diplomat said softly. They don't calculate risk the same way. They don't respect the boundaries we've spent millennia establishing. They see a problem, and they solve it. Consequences be damned. But she saved the cubs. I know. The diplomat's voice was heavy with something that might have been fear, or respect, or both. That's what terrifies me. She saved them because it was the right thing to do, not because it was safe, not because it was logical, not because regulations permitted it. I don't understand. The diplomat finally looked at the aide. The galaxy runs on rules, youngling. On protocols and procedures and predictable behavior. We study, we plan, we mitigate risk. We survive by being careful. They gestured at Carla. Humans survive by being reckless. And somehow, impossibly, it works. On stage, Carla was laughing at something a journalist had said. The Alpha's tail thumped once against the floor. The cameras captured everything. Tomorrow, the footage would play across 1,000 worlds. Tomorrow, the galaxy would watch a human stand beside an apex predator and smile. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, in a conference room that smelled like recycled air and nervous sweat, an elder diplomat made a note in their personal log. Entry: 4,829. Today I witnessed the future of galactic policy. It has sharp teeth, no regard for safety protocols, and it's being led by a human who walked through fire for strangers. I recommend we start rewriting the manuals. All of them. The press conference ended. Carla walked out with the Alpha at her side. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "She's not even wearing armor." Someone else whispered back, "She doesn't need to." And deep in the archives of the Galactic Conservation Union, a file was marked with a new classification. Subject: Human-Vrin Bonding Event. Status: Ongoing threat level. Undefined recommendation: Observe. Do not interfere. Notes: We are no longer studying Death World predators. We are studying what happens when Death World predators meet Death World primates. May the ancestors help us all. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Inside, Carla scratched the Alpha behind the ears. "Ready to go?" she asked. The Alpha rumbled deep in its chest. It sounded almost like a purr. "Yeah," Carla said. "Me too." They walked into the night together, and the galaxy watched, and learned, and wondered what humanity would do next.